little show here is as part of the minute-by-minute podcast that we do, Ryan and I have a section where we talk about the different script deviations that are out there with the movie. So I follow a later draft of the script that, you know, is a little bit different from what we see on screen, but Ryan follows like the first or second original Ron Friedman script, which is at the very least mind-altering. And so he's going to get into it in a segment that he calls
Script Deviations.
What timing?
I know, I'm great. Thank you. Yes, I do believe this is a second draft of Ron Friedman's script that he did a pass on, and it is bonkers. It seemed like parts of it seemed like it was literally written in cocaine.
So this is the original script before it got sliced and diced by production.
Yeah, basically he did this is his second pass, and I can't imagine how crazy the first pass was. And it was pretty heavily edited from what I'm about to get into to what we see.
Can you
on
hold
screen.
it up for him real quick?
Oh yeah, there it is. There's my physical copy.
Signed by the man himself.
Yep, let's talk about that later. So why not start right off the bat with some deviations about some horrible Autobot murder? This movie took the bold step of just slaughtering everybody we cared about in the first 25 minutes. But the original script, the kills were even worse, especially on the Autobot shuttle. On screen, we see Brawn, who is killed by Starscream wielding Megatron. But in the original script, Brawn is cut in half by Megatron's fusion cannon.
By the way, that's a Ryan Jet drawing right there.
That's true. Any of the black and white drawings I did, anything in color is somebody else's artwork. Probably Floro Derry, who did all the season 3 designs and the designs for the movie. God, that's gross. So then we go on to Prowl. And Prowl gets shot by Scavenger in the movie, and it's already a pretty gruesome death because his eyes burn and the smoke comes out of his mouth. And I like Prowl a lot, so that was a particularly heart-wrenching one. But in the script, it says we see Prowl as Scavenger melts him down into basically a Prowl puddle. Yeah, there's not much else to say about that. Let's go on to Ironhide and Ratchet. These poor guys, they're just shot to pieces by everybody. But in the script, Scavenger, Megatron, and Kickback all firing at once at Ironhide and Ratchet, who in the act of firing back are fused together and blasted apart and fall in smoldering fragments.
So they fuse them together, then they blow them back apart.
It's like, damn, Friedman. And that's his capitalization, not mine. So the drawing I did here, it was reminiscent of this description reminded me of a 1990s Marvel comic of the Transformers where Megatron and Ratchet get fused together in a transporter accident. And I think just people who work on Transformers might be gross. They might, in every iteration, it seems horrible. So I did come up with a portmanteau of a couple's name for Megatron and Ratchet. Match it.
Match it.
I spent time on that. All right, let's go on to a segment called Different by Design. That's some Floro Derry work right there. It's so awesome. In this script, Unicron is interchangeably called Unicron, but also Ingester. And in fact, the Decepticons transformed by Unicron have a battle cry, Ingester and Victory. And they even have a different insignia that Unicron made. It's not the Decepticon symbol. So this is the way we're used to seeing Unicron. Planet, gravitational ray, horns, chewing. But in the script, he not only swallows moons and planets whole, that will come back later, he has a whole different method of consuming energy, and it's very bizarre. In this script, Unicron starts feeding off the energy of Earth by Galvatron and the Decepticon making huge piles of Energon cubes, which Unicron sucks up through a soda straw. They don't call it a soda straw, they call it an energy beam, but let me read the description. Energon cubes start to be sucked dry up and through the cold beam into the deepest space with soda straw sucking sounds. Which is fun and alliterative, but very silly. All right, Clonus, the Junkion Horror, and if any of you get that, you win a no prize.
No one got that.
Nope, that's all right. So while on Junkion, the way the Autobots, aside from Ultra Magnus, avoid being killed by the Decepticons. It has a wacky, overly complicated ruse to it. It's kind of the same way. Galvatron and the Decepticons still chase the Autobots, and Ultra Magnus has the whole team hide. But before that, Ultra Magnus huddles up with Perceptor and says, "Did you do what I asked?" Perceptor opens something like a steel attaché case. "I did, but the tolerances are not quite as close as I would have liked. However, they should serve the purposes." And we have a view from inside the case. There are small models of Blur, Springer, Arcee, and Perceptor. Ultra Magnus, "Will they fool Galvatron when they attain full size?" Perceptor, "If Galvatron examines the remains of the clones after he's destroyed them, he'll know he's been tricked." And then Ultra Magnus says, "I can deal with that now." And that just blew my mind. I mean, granted, I had like a bottle of booze, but like I just sat with that for a long time. I don't think we even covered that in the show whenever we did that episode. After that, it's basically the same. The rest of the Autobots hide. Ultra Magnus and the clones, which are now full size, they grow like those little capsules you put in water that make like dinosaur foam things. And basically, everybody gets slaughtered, and it just seems like an excuse for killing more Autobots. And so, also, the clones, though basic, can both transform and shoot the Decepticons, and I'm like, Percy, if you can make battle clones, just do that. I mean, maybe they're super expensive, but between Wheeljack and Perceptor, I think maybe the Autobot scientists are just not very good at their jobs.
Well, if these are like third-party toys, they are way too expensive.
Oh, sick burn. Whose shot was that, Val?
Actually, they're cheaper now versus Takara, but let's move on.
All right, let's talk about Arcee, one of my favorite characters. She gets some kind of short shrift in this movie. Being the most prevalent female in the series and the only one in the movie, she gets some kind of sexist 80s treatment here. In particular, Springer keeps grabbing her by the wrist and moving her around, which is really strange. It's like, imagine if he was doing that to Perceptor. Like, come here, you microscope.
Perceptor probably needs it.
Well,
He needs the guidance.
it's true. And they also tend to protect her, all the Autobots do in this script. There's a scene where Arcee is shooting at Scourge, and Hot Rod grabs her by the waist and tells her to practice bravery some other time. Like, guys, she's literally doing her job. Then there's this disgusting B love story between Hot Rod and Arcee, and I don't know about you guys, and when I was a kid in the movie, I kind of felt there was a will they, won't they, Sam and Diane kind of thing, but I guess it's not obvious. Maybe I just put that on them. And in the script, it's very obvious that that's supposed to be the case. Here's some examples of in the script. When Hot Rod and Arcee are pushing the launcher into place, it says, she likes him, but doesn't want to go too far. So gross. And then Hot Rod looking at Arcee, interested in her, but trying to be cool. Then on Quintessa, after Hot Rod repairs Cup, Hot Rod says, we're wasting time. The Dinobots might be in trouble. Or maybe it's Arcee out there, surrounded by aliens, or maybe... And he just trails off. And then Cup silences him with an upraised hand and says, I'm the one with the fantasy stories, remember? And I do not.
Yeah, what are Cup's fantasy stories?
Oh, that's just...
Oh, everyone's like,
Yeah, nobody liked that thought. Oh, man. Then there is one wrist grab that actually I'd have no problem with. It is used to rescue her, but only after they almost leave her at Autobot City. Springer does grab her wrist and pull her into the shuttle. So, if I haven't said enough, did somebody say wrist grab? That's a rhetorical question, but this next question is not. Is anybody out there also a fan of the 1987 G.I. Joe, the movie?
Good.
All right. That is the correct tepid response to that question. After we finished doing our minute-by-minute review of Transformers movie, we took on G.I. Joe, but it was like 10 minutes at a time because have mercy. People would just be throwing their phones in the toilet. But G.I. Joe the movie was also a Sunbow production, and we noticed something interesting in the scene where Jinx is working on a vehicle in the motor pool, and Lieutenant Falcon basically just comes in here to harass her, and whenever she turns to leave, wait for it, boom! Wrist grab. So I made this little fun graphic of a classic Sunbow Productions wrist grab. But there were two other Sunbow productions in the mid-'80s, and one of them was in Humanoids, And the other one was My Little Pony, the movie. We have a 4 for 4 Sunbow wrist grab here. To be fair, the My Little Pony one does look like it's a rescue.
It's a rescue.
But still, what was going on at Sunbow Studios? It couldn't have been a good place to work. We have our friend at EGA74 on Twitter to thanks for pointing out those last two. So how about that last spark, y'all? This is the idea of the spark is something that isn't introduced in canon until Beast Wars, but it is in this script. The first mention of a spark is at Megatron when he's down at the bottom of this cliff after his fight with Prime. Starscream says, "How do you feel, mighty Megatron? You look dreadful." And Megatron says, "The wound is mortal. My life spark hungers for infinite peace." We'll get back to Megatron in just a second. Let's go to Prime. So the Matrix is not a physical object in this. It's a spark. There's this spark, and the way the spark is portrayed as a door in Prime's chest opens, revealing a pure white light, and Optimus Prime's life spark floats out. It's a glowing, pulsating, visible creature of pure radiant energy in the form of a miniature Optimus Prime. Which I feel downgrades the seriousness of the moment quite a bit, just to have a little homunculus floating from chest to chest.
These people are laughing like they know what a what's that word?
What is a homunculus?
It's just a tiny guy inside of another guy. I just like the word homunculus and it's very hard to work into conversation.
Good job.
Thanks. Let's go to the Decepticon Hall of Heroes. In this script, Megatron is still alive and with them, and these statues that have those little flickering lights, those are Decepticon heroes, and those flickering lights are their life sparks that are entombed in there. Those are they, right there.
Them are those.
Oh, you're going to correct me? No. All right. So Megatron is still alive at this point, like I said, but the other Decepticons just ignore him and get in a huge fight, like they did on the shuttle, of who is going to be the next leader, and they, in the process, knock over one of the statues and kill Megatron. And whenever Megatron dies, these statues, a bunch of them crumble, and all the life sparks of these Decepticon heroes and Megatron float out and into space, and those are what Unicron uses to make new Decepticons, not the bodies. Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So, if you're asking yourself, Ryan, if the Matrix isn't a physical object, how does Galvatron get it away from Ultra Magnus? Well, he basically just chainsaws his chest open and puts Prime in a bottle. And that's real. He puts Optimus Prime in a bottle like a Sting song. Thank you for laughing at that. And the way that Hot Rod gets the spark in this would have been the Matrix. In this case, the spark away from Galvatron is kind of the same. He pulls it off the chain, but it breaks on the wall, and it's actually Optimus Prime's spark comes out and it starts to glow, and he says, "Arise, Rodimus Prime," basically. And it's Prime's spark that destroys Unicron, not the Matrix. So presumably now Prime's spark is gone? That's not explained. But there is no Unicron head pop off, which is a shame. That was a good punch up. Speaking of Unicron's death, Rodimus does fight Galvatron in this script, like I said. And after Galvatron is thrown out of the movie, Unicron is exploding, and Rodimus looks up and straightens up to fly off, pauses. From his perspective, you see the moons of Cybertron in webbing near the top corners of the vast stomach cavern. And Rodimus says, "The third and fifth moons of Cybertron." In this script, Unicron did swallow the moons of Cybertron, but he did it whole. So all the factories that are on there, Jazz and Cliffjumper and Spike and Bumblebee are on those moons, and they're calling for help, and he hears them. So long story short, that's right. Long story short, he flies up and blasts the net apart, and then, as Ingester explodes, the moons hurtle outward and swept out to Cybertron and pulled back into orbit, which is very ridiculous. And I know Caleb always mocks me for trying to find science in these alien transforming sentient robots, but we have to have some law. I mean, to be fair, Unicron's head does become a moon, so maybe Cybertron's just crazy good at catching moons. And then somehow Rodimus survives this explosion, and he flies out and toward camera. He is smiling and brave looking. He flies past the canopy of the cruiser and waves and winks at them. Arcee puts an arm around Daniel and blows Rodimus Prime a kiss. I hate that. Just in this segment on positivity, I'll end it with Ron Friedman's signature on the front page of this script. It says, "To Ryan, I loved seeing this iconic page in my lifetime. Thanks for your appreciation of my efforts and half-assed immortality, Ron Friedman." Aaron was nice enough to get this signed for me at TFcon. Yeah.